I have this thing with people. I think this is going to sound really. I'm a realist. I noticed you listed yourself as an optimist in that talk as well. I kind of consider myself more of a realist. So even though this statement is going to sound very negative, I think typically humans have a base sense of kind of corruption, and I caveat that by saying most of the isms we have in the world, whether it's a feminism or whether it's a capitalism or whether it's a socialism, the isms we have, at their purest sense, like their absolute cornerstone for what they are, seem to be okay, seem to have validity, seem to have logic and reason behind them. But then fucking people get involved and we corrupt it. And so capitalism turns into a greed. Socialism turns into actually the person who runs the country makes it so bad for the poorest, then there is thousands of deaths. Whatever it is, we seem to corrupt it. And I just wondered, maybe this is a pessimist part of me, or maybe it's a realist, with these groups of 100 people. And let me say, I love that idea. I really genuinely, I think it's a great idea. But then I take a step back and go, how do we then also do that and have it not be corrupted like all the other isms get corrupted?
Fascinating question. I mean, I find it so interesting because in a way, like your description of corruption sort of flips on the head the normal account of those things, which is that people are fine, but the problem is when people get attached to a really abstract ideology. Like the critique, one of the valid critiques of socialism, I think, is that, most people are actually sort of quite nice and kind and good to each other, but socialists sort of had this elevated idea of, we've got a theory, we know how to build the perfect society. That theory is so important that we're going to run over anybody who stands in our way. And even if we have to send X million people to the gulags, we're so attached to the theory. So I'm interested, that's how I've conventionally seen that presented.
But see, I would say that socialism in its purest is more communal and more us being equal and looking after one another. I think the sending people to the gulag is the people getting involved in the purest sense of what that way of running the society is. I think the sending to the gulag is, and I'm talking about, I'm being naive, and I guess I'm trying to be a bit of oversimplify it by going, capitalism is an example, the idea that we all can produce a product and the product that's the best and that sits best in the marketplace will be elevated under an even playing surface to be the best one, except we get in and corrupt it and we put our thumb on the scale and we say this one might be the best, but actually I want to make more profit, so I'm going to put my thumb on the scale. So it's not actually in its purest sense. So I think that the systems, and I'll use that word again, in their purest sense, in their initial simple ideology, most of them seem okay. I'm not saying are perfect. No one, come at me because I love communism, but it's the people who corrupt it. And it's because we get into the capitalism, we go, hey, hang on. So you telling me if I put my thumb on the scale, I can make an extra 10 mil? Well, shit, yeah, I'll do that. Or whatever it is,
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. But also at the same time, does anything have to work perfectly? I don't think it does.
No, I don't think it can.
No, absolutely. So I think that's not a problem. I guess what you want then is, I'm just thinking about this because I've never thought about this in this way, and it's really interesting. I guess what you want is a system that has really strong inbuilt sort of self-correction mechanisms against that sort of corruption by humans, if you want to think about it that way. And I feel like the sort of stuff I'm talking about does. I mean, yeah, of course, look, it's imperfect and, all the kinds of things that I love, citizens' assemblies, citizen-led budgeting. Of course, it can go wrong and it can be corrupted, but what is central to them, and, what is central, I think, to, they represent the core of what democracy is about for me, which is people coming together and having to argue the toss with each other and having to come to, some kind of consensus, or at least agree to disagree. And in that way, finding the best answers and moving forward. And the reason I'm an optimist is that I think over the long run, most things get better. I think we generally run the world better than we did 100 or 1,000 years ago. I mean, climate change is the obvious exception, but actually we understand much more about the damage we do to the planet than we have ever done in the past. So at least we're in a position to tackle it. And why is democracy successful? I mean, someone once said, it's a really nice line, democracies probably don't make any fewer mistakes than autocracies do, but they fix them much quicker.
Right.
Democracy is a learning system. It's the ultimate learning system because everyone gets to have a say and you can bring everyone's ideas together. And so I think because in the things I advocate for, there's this constant interaction of people constantly coming face to face with each other, seeing the evidence, listening to experts, agreeing, disagreeing, changing their position. That's the best sort of feedback mechanism you could hope to find against that sort of corruption that you're talking about, I think.